Welcome to Product Leaders, a podcast series by Orbis. I'm Ben Moulton.
I'm Ty Silvera. Great to be joining as a co-host finally.
We're back with a brand new season, more episodes, more guests, and a step up in the conversations we're having across the product pond.
We'll be speaking to product leaders from startups through to scale-ups and global teams, unpacking how they actually build, ship, and scale great products.
Our aim stays the same, to share insights that help those starting out in product,
and practical advice for those already in the thick of it, navigating the day-to-day challenges of the role.
So whether you're breaking into product or leading teams,
there should be something in here for you.
Let's get into it. Today I'm joined by Michelle Wright, a fractional product leader with a broad background across banking, fintech, B2B SaaS, data and AI. Michelle is our first repeat guest and it's great to have her back again. Things we cover include the changing economics of AI, why costs are shifting, and what that means for product teams right now. We also talk about why engineers seem to be moving faster than PMs with AI, and what that means for how teams are structured. Let's get stuck into it. Hey Michelle, welcome back. Second time on the podcast. How are things for you?
Very much looking forward to being back.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you back. I was just looking up when I was preparing for this morning, and you first appeared just over 2 years ago. That was episode 11, which is slightly frightening, given how many we've done since then. So,
when will this be?
This will be, not quite exactly sure, but somewhere in the 30s. So definitely.
Anyone else come back, or am I the first to come back?
Yes, I was about to say you're the first repeat guest, so that's exciting as well. Fair to say you've graduated to friend of the Product Leaders podcast. So great to have you on. And I think a lot's changed since our first conversation, obviously particularly in the world of AI. And I know over the last few months you've obviously been researching it a lot and writing extensively and sort of building in that space as well. So really excited to dive into that. I suppose maybe just for people who haven't met you before, don't know you, haven't listened to the previous podcast, do you want to give a quick intro of yourself, what you're working on, who you are?
Sure.
That'd be great if that's all right.
I'm a product leader, mostly in fintech, and I've been in large organizations, banking, right down to startups. Worked in an AI startup about 15 years ago and always thought we were about 10 years ahead of where we should be. And then 10 years later, ChatGPT launched. So at the moment I'm working fractionally, and it's really given me the opportunity to really get deep into AI. And with kind of AI and being able to build, it's been an absolute game changer for me. It's really been so empowering to just be able to solve my own problems and not have to go to engineers and go like, please, can you build this for me? It's been an absolute game changer. I'm sure what I'm building would take an engineer like a lot less time, and they'd probably be able to do it a lot better. But it's been incredible. And it's also given me a lot of respect for engineers, because there's a lot of decisions that they need to make. And I think it's going to make me better at the product craft too, because you're really understanding more around being very specific and very deliberate and making sure you have your outcomes and your kind of key success measures, which is so important, and so important when you're using AI too.
Yeah, for sure. We're obviously going to dive into it a lot, aren't we? But I think it's great to hear straight away that you're hands-on, using these new tools, and I think rightly so. I think a lot of product people should be doing that, and if you're not, and probably need to be getting going with it pretty soon, otherwise you fall behind.
There's like two ways that a product role is going. It's like those that build, and then those that manage information. And I'm definitely keen to be on the side of the cutting edge side rather than the managing information. I listen to a great podcast on that, which we can go on for a while with.
For sure. I guess before we get into the big themes, tell us also a little bit about Little Lenny's. What is it? What made you decide to build it? So people might follow you, might see you launched it the other day.
So this is another one of my passion projects. I actually did other things in the education space because I've got two boys, 9 and 10-year-old boys. And I went to my 9-year-old's class and built a game with them across the 3 different classes, and by the end of the day the year group had built a game. We launched the game, and their homework was to play the game and think about improvements, and it was all really great fun for them. They're still talking about it, but it got me thinking about how much we do or we don't do in education for young kids, and I think even at university. So I saw a build-a-thon by Lenny from Lenny's podcast. I'm not sure if anyone listens to that, but it's a really famous product podcast. And he made all of his podcast transcripts available online and did a build-a-thon with Replit. and I thought I would enter it, came up with an idea and thought I would, think about creating podcasts for kids. So I took the syllabus. My initial age was 7 to 10, but I then realized actually that's probably a bit too young, and I then moved up to about 9 to 11 after doing some testing. Went through the syllabus, created this craze bank, trend bank of the way kids speak, the things they speak about. I mean, hopefully I'm like now down cool with the kids. And then created a really big script to analyze the transcripts and then reproduce a kid-like podcast. I then had AI transcribe it and created a podcast. I had real trouble with the voice and getting a realistic voice, so I just lent into the, hey, this is Little Lenny, I'm an AI agent, so I kind of lent into that, and it not being a person and not being real. So the testing, it was really great. It was really great feedback. I had some teachers involved. It's obviously not for everyone, but it's about taking the adult concepts and translating it into a way that kids can understand, which I think there's a real gap in the market for that. And it probably appeals to the kids of parents who are in product and technology, because we find we're often talking about things and the kids kind of overhear us and they want to know what we're talking about and how to explain it. So hopefully this gives them an easy way to help with the concepts. So it's live and up, and there are 5 podcasts at the moment, and we'll see where I take it from there.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's great. I think what I really like about it most is, it's very easy to get stuck into the AI, sort of theory side of things, but that's obviously a really good working example of how AI is changing what just one person can build, test, and distribute, really easily. So
maybe I'll run it through this, see what it
see what it comes up with. Off the back of that, I suppose, could you, when we spoke last time, could you realistically have built that as a solo operator back then?
Absolutely not. That's why I say it's been so empowering, and having this time to think about actually, what do we do? I've done so many little family projects and things that just help me. I've got so many ideas that it's opened up things for me.
No, that's great. And I guess one of the reasons I want to start there with Little Lenny's is I feel like it's a really good practical example of some of the things we're going to discuss today. I think it touched upon things like model choice, cost, workflow design, speed of execution, all of that sort of stuff. And one thing that originally kind of jumped out of the email that you sent me, in your kind of notes around these topics, was this idea that AI has effectively been subsidized until now, right? So many companies haven't really thought about what's going to happen next and how that's going to change things. So I want to start there as a sort of first theme around the end of the AI subsidy era, as you sort of put it. A lot of people are using AI at the moment, day to day, lots of companies are, but they haven't necessarily thought deeply into the economics that are underneath it. So to start off, what do we actually mean by AI sort of being subsidized until now? Over to you.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing that actually prompted my thinking was, again, listening to a podcast, and it was with OpenAI's head of product, and he compared AI plans to unlimited electricity, and he suggested that they are going to be phasing them out entirely. And I think that's a real signal of everything that we assumed about how we use AI in product teams, and we really need to start revisiting that. And I use the phrase AI is going to be more expensive, but I think what I'm actually meaning is it's about the way that we use it. And it's, I guess, looking at the LLM providers and where they are at the moment, and they're all making a loss. I think the numbers are public. You have Anthropic, they spend $2 for every $1 that they earn. OpenAI, there's losses of 1.35 on every dollar of revenue. And GitHub Copilot also charges $10 a month, but loses between 20 and 80 per user. So I think those are all indicating that something is going to have to change to make these organizations actually more stable, and they can't keep being invested by venture capitalists. So that's what I'm thinking, the prices are going to have to change. I think there's also been other signals in the market around that's showing scarcity. I think in April we had quite a few Anthropic outages. They tried to charge or remove Claude Pro from their account, which was quickly reversed. They've also brought in Claude Design, and that has a new charging model. We've seen limits, we've seen kind of glitches, and I think it shows, compute is scarce and it is going to be driving the prices up. I mean, from my perspective, that's pure economics. But I think it's a bit more complex than that, because it's not just AI is getting more expensive. It's really looking at the per token cost. There is a lot of AI that is cheaper, that is really reducing in price. So you have DeepSeek, they are looking at 0.28 cents per million token, and that's pretty much free. There's a lot of open source. So I just want to be clear on what I really mean, that it's really about the tokens. Yes, we're seeing a bifurcation across cheap and expensive. You're seeing the frontier models that are definitely a lot more expensive. Claude Opus is 75 pounds per million tokens. ChatGPT is 30 pounds per million. So you're seeing the real cost curve at the bottom end and at the top end is really changing. So I think every company needs to be thinking about how we use that and how we use AI. 2 years ago, we used to use AI to write emails, but now we're using AI for everything. We have, AI agents. We have AI running agents all the time. We have agents checking agents. We have agents managing agents. There's workflows that trigger automatically. So I think the way people are using AI is very different to the way people are using it 2 years ago. Our amount of usage is really going up. So we can't use it the way we did 2 years ago.
I mean, some of those numbers are crazy. Obviously, huge sort of compute costs in general. Obviously, AI companies are generally absorbing those. VC-backed, VCs and big tech are sort of balancing those sheets, aren't they, at the moment? And I guess, ultimately what you're saying, my read of it is that the phase that we've been in over the last couple of years has more been about customer adoption, and now we're now more in that, or we're potentially entering that more commercial phase. I think that's that.
Yeah, you've said it much better than I have.
No, that's what was my understanding. But I think I'm keen to unpack like the other bits about open source and versus frontier and that kind of stuff. So we've kind of covered, what it means to be, this phase of growth in like, AI being subsidized. I think you mentioned also about the kind of divergence between frontier models and open source models, and I think the way that I've understood that is the most powerful models remain the most expensive, as you kind of put it, and the open source models are getting enough growth. They've got a lot of good use cases. So I suppose the analogy I like to think about is, do you need a Ferrari or do you need a Toyota for your business? So I guess the question is, does every company actually need frontier level capability?
I would say no, and I think different companies need different things, but also within what you do, you could use different models for different tasks that you do. So as an example, if you're a retailer and you're recommending trainers, getting it slightly wrong, it doesn't really cost you anything. So you can use a cheaper model for that if you're just recommending products. But if you in financial services and you're making credit decisions, you're flagging fraud or you sending clients data through AI, you can't just use any model for that. So you really need it and audit it and be able to answer for it. So I think those companies need to have the frontier model. And if you look at your work, I like to think the kind of deep thinking, challenging management work, you would need a better model for that. Whereas your repeatable tasks, you could use something kind of cheaper, open source for that.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense, and it reminds me a little bit of of hiring as well. Most companies don't need the best engineer in the world. Maybe they do in some cases, but most probably don't. You need the right level of capability for that particular problem that you're solving, right?
Exactly my analogy too. Think about your AI budget the same way as you do about your headcount budget. You don't hire everyone at the same level. Junior work goes to junior hires, and that's like your open source commodity models, and then your senior high stakes work goes to the more experienced people, and that's your frontier models. So you wouldn't hire a senior partner to write a meeting summary, as you wouldn't hire a graduate to make like a credit decision. So where judgment applies, the same with AIs where you would with people. And I think having a planned, deliberate strategy is really important.
Yeah, nice. That makes sense. So sort of like open source is probably good enough, like internal workflows, content transformation, like supportive automation, that sort of stuff. And then if you're going like really deep, technical, something a lot more complex, risk heavy, then maybe you want something a bit more heavyweight. Yeah, definitely makes sense. And I guess someone has got to start making these decisions, right, on AI infrastructure, what to invest in, what not to invest in. Is that, my guess would be economics, is that kind of economic side of it is maybe sits more with procurement. Yeah, I guess hypothetically, who are you seeing maybe making those decisions, in the future?
I think it should be everyone, but I think I'm very entrepreneurial in this way. I think it becomes an organization problem. I think just like you have an AOP, and when it was just engineers you were using AI tools, it was clearly a technology budget line. But I think as every function uses AI, I think product, sales, customer success, finance, the cost really multiplies across the organization. It really stops becoming a CTO conversation and it becomes more of a CFO, finance conversation. I think every C-suite leader should own their AOP, their headcount, as well as their tools and their AI budget. And you should be looking at how the cost versus the return that you get from it. AI needs to sit in that. And I think each leader should be accountable for their function, how they use it, and then what it returns.
That's interesting. So basically you would say, like, as a CPO, that would be your decision to an extent on what's being used and what's not being used. Is that right?
I would like to do that. I'd like to agree with that, because then you have an accountability to make sure you're using it in the best way.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. By the way, it's just I guess I would think maybe that kind of CFO procurement type person who thinks about what tech needs to be used and the budgets for certain area. And obviously they would have maybe like an overall budget which gets distributed down. Yeah, I suppose it depends how much your particular department is using. Obviously, engineering are going to be using it in quite a different way to maybe sales automation, so it makes a big difference. And I think just to sort of as a nice stepping stone, that obviously means that we need to start thinking about the dynamics between products and engineering and how each kind of party uses AI and some of these models in different ways. And then again, this jumped out to me in your original kind of notes around. I think you sort of made an argument that engineers are seeing a lot more productivity gains in AI than PMs, and that has, I suppose, real implications on the broader team structure and the future of that. I think it's probably true, but why are engineers seeing much larger productivity gains than PMs?
Yeah, and this is something I've been thinking about quite a lot, because I know the number, like the 10x number, gets bounced around quite a bit. So I've been looking to try and find data about this, and I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. I think it's important to try and get these numbers right, although it's really difficult. Engineers seem to be seeing, I think looking at the numbers first, 55% increase faster on well-defined coding tasks, which is only really 2x, and that comes from GitHub Microsoft study from 2023, so it may be out of date, and we're probably seeing a lot more than that. I know Amal, the head of growth at Anthropic, mentioned much higher numbers than that, 6-7 times. But that's, I think when you're looking at the types of problems that they're solving, complex architecture problem solving is still under 10%. And I don't doubt that there are teams achieving 10%, and the peer-reviewed data doesn't show that as a norm. But that's, I guess, where we want to be getting to. I think PMs and knowledge workers, I think the best stats that I could find is 25% faster, and that's more on writing, analysis, and synthesis. But I think the thing we also need to think about is not just speed, it's also quality that improves. So being able to prototype, being able to kind of get to the detail a lot more, obviously helps engineers, helps the quality, and therefore also helps the engineers around that. I think designers, it's a bit harder. I think the design role is so broad. Numbers like 40% I've seen quoted in a UX study, but the design work varies enormously. I think there's like asset production, it's completely different to strategic design and design thinking. So I find it difficult to think about that. But obviously that has a lot of implications on how we're structured. And I'm quite passionate around what this means for the operating model, because you bring in AI, different people speed up in different ways. So we need to think about how we change the whole operating model and how people work together.
Yeah, I mean, I believe those figures. I think it's I don't know. It's interesting because obviously as you said, like the synthesis, the writing, that's obviously a part that is improved probably for most people, you know, who do desk jobs, right? It's an interesting world trying to apply AI to product management. You know, you've got maybe some customer insight, commercial judgment, prioritization. You know, it's there's a lot of sixth sense sort of stuff there. I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, you know, it boosts you a little bit to an extent with just general automation, time management, speeding things up. But actually, sitting in front of the customer, you can't necessarily change that. I don't think there's a lot that AI can do to speed up that productivity. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I guess the thing that's clear is that engineers are speeding up more than product. And engineering build, that used to be the scarcest resource in any product team. It always used to be about optimizing whatever the engineers can do, kind of bringing the specs to them, having delivery managers shielding the engineers from the noise. The PMs were just selling things to the engineers so that the engineers could go faster, the velocity tracking, the story points, and all of that has been built around making engineers go faster. But even that is changing, because the way we think about kind of agile and the methodologies, the teams are moving faster, but the ceremony layer is no longer needed, because you don't have a large team of engineers. You don't have sprint planning. You know, sprints are getting shorter. Do you even need story points? I think story points are disappearing. Velocity tracking, do we need that? Because you just have the agent going off and kind of building your code. The roles feeling it most, I think, are delivery managers, scrum masters, anyone whose job is coordinating things and kind of rather than creating. So I think the metric around that also needs to change. We don't want to be tracking velocity, but we really need to think about, do we have clarity? And the question shifts to, how long will it take to, do we have everything that we need? Do we really understand it to map to the strategy that we're building? But I think also thinking about the overall, I feel that I almost think looking at it as a bit of a shift left. So engineers could be shifting left. Engineers can really help with discovery, make discovery much more collaborative. They can come in earlier, so that real handoff disappears. I think we also need to think about the ratio between engineering and product. If engineers are getting the biggest benefit, does that ratio flip? We've seen some organizations go down to as little as kind of 1 PM to half an engineer, or the ratios of before, where it was 5-6 engineers per PM. That's definitely changing. A coordination layer that I was talking about, the story points, the sprint planning, that should be going away. And then I think as AI also becomes a managed resource, I think we need to think about who owns that return per token, like who's measuring that, there's conversations about teams doing AI like token maxing and being measured on how many tokens they spend, but who's actually managing the output that we get from those tokens? I think that's kind of a role in the product organization that, or maybe not a role, maybe just a job to be done that hasn't been thought through.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that last bit. I think there's a couple of things to unpack there. Maybe a slightly controversial question, but you've obviously got you've got the kind of full core fundamentals of what a product manager does: prioritization, speaking to customers, basically the coordinations, the stuff that you're talking about, and then there's a lot of softer skills, sixth sense type stuff, sort of trying to find invisible products, really like understanding your customer, problem space well. If AI is speeding up and optimizing a lot of that coordination, do you think do you think AI potentially exposes some weak product management? Is that what we're starting to see?
I just think the product manager role is changing. And I'm also interested to see what you're seeing on the recruiter side, because there's a lot of conversation about product builders and should product managers be building? And this is, as I said earlier, I've been doing it. I've absolutely been loving it. I think this is the way the PM trade is going. And it's, the industry's response has been to push product managers towards building, but engineers have the spare capacity now. So they have more capacity to do more. So should PMs really be the ones that are prototyping? There's multiple reasons for needing to prototype, but do we get engineers to prototype? Do we bring them more I think that's what I mean by the kind of shift left. So I'm actually challenging whether product managers should be prototyping. As much as I've been enjoying it and loving it, I don't know what the answer is then. It's probably not being prescriptive, because you also get different types of product managers. But I know in most engineers would be able to prototype better and faster than most product managers. So there's kind of that challenge to come in. And that's something that I'm challenging, but I'm wondering what you are seeing in the market, Ben.
Yeah. I mean, I think that but before AI, more technical PMs have always been able to get closer to that, to the prototyping stuff. Ex-engineers who've become PMs can always get their hands dirty maybe more quickly and understand that the more technical problem space more easily. And I think that presumably AI is helping PMs to do that more. That's certainly what I'm hearing. They can get closer to that sort of space, and I think that I would agree almost with my question. I do think that it exposes some weak product management. That's what I'm seeing in the market, because I think that the fundamentals of, do you know the good theory around product strategy? Can you prioritize features?
Yeah.
Can you just run a good sprint planning session? That a lot of that gets taken up. Can you write good product requirement documentation like that? That could be helped by AI. So if that's just kind of a give. It was always a given that people should PMs should just be good at that. I think that now with AI helping,
you need to be good at that in your
should be good at that, right? You don't necessarily need to be good at it. So I think the things that made the better PMs was the softer skills, the great communication, being able to talk to senior stakeholders really quickly, get the senior stakeholders to understand what the why is, the crux of it. What does this actually mean to me? Why are you telling me this? That kind of answer. And I think that is irreplaceable. And what it means is that those top PMs who still have the best softer skills are even more elevated, because all of that other stuff that took them longer now doesn't take them any time at all, really. That's my take, and that's what I'm seeing.
I mean, I totally agree. I feel like the PM role is coming back to what it really should be, and what it, like the real heart of it, not what it's become. It's really, like you say, framing the problem and starting with why. I always think about Simon Sinek. Like, why are we doing this? What is the problem we're solving? Who are we solving it for? What does it matter? And then AI will generate 10 solutions. And if you haven't nailed the why, the 10 solutions may be the wrong problem that you're trying to solve, and you'll fail faster. And I think that the challenge is you have engineers that can run faster. They'll just be delivering things that you can't keep up with. So it's being really, really clear that, are you solving the right problem? I think that's one thing. And then thinking about Marty Kagan and his risks, the two that really stick out is value and viability. Feasibility is off the table, because that's really around, can we build things? And we know AI is helping with that. What remains is the hardest part. Does anyone actually want this? And can the business sustain it? I think those are the two questions. So value is all about, do people want to buy this? Will they like it? Will they spend money on it? And then viability is all around, will this make money for the organization? And I think those are the core things that product manager needs to think about. And then I think the third is really holding the system view. And what I mean by that, it's not just about what we're building, but it's about how things land. And the PM is the person that holds it all together. The customer, the research, the market signals, the roadmap, kind of who we've promised what to, how you bring it together, how you launch it to clients, and how you speak to clients, how you speak about the problem that you're solving and not just the technology that you are launching. So how you manage the revenue targets, how you speak to the board, how you connect the strategy. I think those are all the things that we're going to go back to as PMs doing really properly. And there's only so much that you should add before a product becomes kind of blown. That comes back to the judgment of building the right thing again. So it almost goes in that full circle around how you communicate it.
Yep, definitely agree. I'm keen to sort of talk about like organizational redesign. I think all of what we've talked about is great. Eventually some things it stops being about the individual productivity and starts becoming more of an organizational thing. I think that's possibly the most interesting part of the conversation. Lots of companies, as we talked about, they're experimenting with AI tools. Far fewer seem to actually be redesigning how they actually work, though. They're plugging in these tools, they're using the frontier models, the open source models. So I think some organisations do have AI on their roadmaps, but others are actually redesigning around it. So it would be, I think, you maybe categorising them as AI native organisations or product organisations. I guess tell me a little bit more about that. What does that actually look like in practice?
I think it's taking one of the points that I made into account around engineers being faster, like thinking about your ratios around how many engineers you need, how many designers you need, how many PMs you need, because that's all going to change because people are getting different benefits from AI. It's thinking about how they communicate, how you communicate. Even as leaders, we should be deep in AI. We should be, creating dashboards, building things so we know exactly where we are with things. CPOs, we can be prototyping, we can be bringing ideas to life. It's thinking about how all of these things connect together. And as also mentioned, the need for having kind of the ceremonies and the governance around the teams is also changing. You're going from having teams that were the traditional 2 pizza-sized teams to perhaps teams of 2 or 1, or like much smaller. And I think the way you measure that needs to change. That's all. It's the measurement. It's how you structure it, how you communicate. That all needs to be thought through.
Yeah. So it's sort of like smaller teams, fewer handoffs. Automation engineers, sharper PM loops.
Which sounds like we're going back to the days of what agile really is, to be honest.
Yeah.
And maybe it feels like we're moving away from Scrum, moving more to like a Kanban style. Like, what is the next thing we do? How do we get it much smaller teams and building around that?
So what do you think most companies are doing wrong then by just say buying these tools without actually changing workflows and maybe treating AI as just an add-on? What are sort of the bigger problems?
Yeah, I think it's about trying to go faster but not redesigning. So just doing the same things faster. And I might sound like I'm contradicting myself, because when using AI, you want to make sure that you don't take steps out and that you're still doing the right thing. So you don't skip to, I've built a prototype, but I haven't done the market research. I haven't spoken to customers. You still need to be doing all of those things, but it's more around, you don't just think about you shortening the time that it's going to take. Think about the impact of that, how that's measured, how that's communicated, and how the team actually works together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's, rather than just sort of layering in AI into the existing process or the existing workflows, it's actually redesign it in a way that makes sure that you're still ticking off the things that you need to do.
And I also heard, I think it's thinking about, if you were to start again, what can you not do with AI, rather than thinking, what piece in the process can I do with AI? Almost as you can do everything with AI and then redesign it from that way around and add in the points where it actually doesn't work, or you need a human in the loop.
Excellent. And maybe let's zoom out to like a product leadership perspective as well. If they are, you're a CPO in a business, you're thinking about redesigning your product org rather than just adding AI into your workflow. What do they need to think about? Structure, accountability over the next 12 to 24 months. What are the things they need to consider?
I would suggest going deep into AI, managing your organization. I am using, and I'm going to give a bit of a shout out to Dave Killeen. He's created a product called Dex. It's a chief of staff. It really helps me manage my day, and it's made me much more efficient. It tells me what I need to do, what I mustn't do. I've created all of these different types of personas that, before you get to a meeting, you can actually have those personas say, challenge me as a CTO, challenge me as a CFO. It's really being able to elevate me, because I think most leaders, you have a coach. I have a skill that is a coach. You have an EA. I have a morning briefing that tells me what I need to do. I have briefings coming in from different kind of podcasts, different YouTube accounts, summarizing what I should know. It knows everything about me, and it knows how to superpower me. I think going big on that, really understanding how to superpower yourself, and then that should really help your team getting deep on that, not being afraid of trying to prototype, trying new things, putting time aside for that. So I think as leaders, we're so busy with the day-to-day that we actually don't get time in our day to really be curious and go deep into to these tools.
I really like that. I think it sounds like a great tool. Not come across it before, so good to give it a shout out. It deserves. Excellent. So I think we've covered a lot here. We've covered economics, model choices, team design, org structures, and I think that just to link it nicely back to Little Lenny's as well, it acts as a miniature case study for a lot of this. As an example, one person building, testing, distributing something. Would previously have required a clearly a much larger team, right?
I mean, I've been amazed by what I could do, and when things don't go right, and I'm like, oh, I'm Claude, I'm gonna get Codex to check your work, and all of a sudden it came right. I'm sure that was just a coincidence, but
yeah, no, it'd be fascinating to see what happens. In the next 12 months, next 24 months, maybe we'll do a podcast again before 2 years this time to see what's changed.
Yeah, and if looking back on where I was 2 years ago, I was just starting to use AI. I was thinking it's amazing, but wow, it's amazing. It can rewrite my email, and this is going to be so much better. But seeing what it does now is absolute game changer. I don't think I would have predicted this. So it's quite scary to think what will be coming in the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And the shockwaves to the industry if what we're thinking about with subsidization changes as well, and how that would alter things. So
my bank account's going to be a lot worse.
For sure. Michelle, it's been brilliant having you back on the podcast, and thanks so much for joining me again. It's been a pleasure as always, and I really enjoyed it.
I did.
No problem. That's it for this episode of Product Leaders.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you found the conversation useful and maybe picked up something you can take back into your own work.
If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
And if there's a topic you'd love us to cover or someone you think we should speak to, let us know.
You can also check out previous episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. See you soon.